You know that sinking feeling when you realise you've been doing something wrong for years? This video is all about that. There was a time I thought bottom watering was the answer to all my Fungusnat woes, that newly repotted plants could handle fertilizer like normal, that tucking aerial roots neatly into the soil was the answer to a healthier Monstera. I even told you to cut off your alocasia's flower like it was doing something offensive. But I've changed my mind, not because I'm flaky, but because I've learned, and that's what plant care is all about, right? Trying things, watching them thrive or maybe suffer as a result, and then changing your ways. So there are a few things I used to swear by that I simply don't do anymore. What's the bane of every single plant parent's existence? I think you know where I'm going with this. No, not yellow leaves and not drooping and not even spider mites, though they deserve their own horror film. I'm talking about Fungusnats. Little midges that spawn from the depths of your soul, doing absolutely nothing positive in this world and just flying directly into your eyeball whenever you try to water your plants. Now, one bit of old advice you'll hear all the time is just bottom water. That way the top layer stays dry and the gnats won't lay eggs. Sounds great, right? Very logical. Except fungus gnats are way sneakier than we give them credit for. They don't just enter through the top, no, they happily sneak in through the back door. I've lost count of the number of times I've pulled a plant out of its pretty outer pot and found a gnat rave going on in the bottom. Now there are lots of remedies people swear by, with some working better than others. Cinnamon, sand, hydrogen peroxide, sticky traps, mosquito bits, singing to your plants under a full moon. They may all work better for you than they have for me, but the sad truth is that you'll never really win the war, only the battle. The thing that I came to terms with recently is that unfortunately they always come back. Even nematodes, which do work and are probably your best bet, only give you a few months peace. Then one day the little tyrants are back. Bottom watering might help a bit, but as a gnat deterrent it's not the magic fix it's cracked up to be. I do still bottom water, but these days it's mainly for root health or when I want to properly hydrate a chunky mix. I love nothing more than chopping down a plant. There's just something so satisfying about it. Snip snip here, snip snip there, take control of the situation and suddenly your plant's listening to you again. It's like plant therapy, but for me. So yeah, I do it all the time. If a plant is overgrown or getting a bit too leggy or even just looking at me funny, I give him a chop. So naturally, I used to do the same thing with my Monsteras. I thought it was the way to go. I mean, most other plants branch out into multiple stems with the right cut, and what's not to love about a Monstera with lots of stems? Well, it turns out Monsteras are not fans of my approach. Have a look at your Monstera. How many branches are there? There's one, right? And this is how it'll be forevermore, unless they come up with something in a lab. These fellas don't branch out like your favourite philodendron. When you prune them, they don't go, oh great, now I'll push out 2 new stems. No, they go, well I guess I'll start over from scratch then. And you get a single new stem growing from the node. This might not sound like a big deal, but the first few leaves on that new stem are usually smaller and more juvenile than the ones you cut off. So now, I basically never prune my Monsteras unless something's genuinely wrong. A gang of yellowing leaves threatening to take over, a thrip infestation, or if the stem is just growing in a stupid way. Other than that, I leave them be. Sure, if you're pruning to propagate, then crack on. Just know that the mother plant will go back a few steps in maturity and take a while to get a groove back. A while back, I made a video telling folks to chop off their alocasia flowers. The idea was that the plant would stop wasting energy on an ugly flower that no one asked for and instead focus on what we actually want, big velvety leaves. And it made sense. I mean, when was the last time you looked at an alocasia flower and thought, wow, stunning? To me, it looks like a peace lily got together with the thing and the result was this. Lately though, I've been wondering if I was a bit too quick with the scissors. I've done more reading, more observing of my alocasias, and the truth is, the science isn't exactly clear cut. Some people swear by removing the flower. They say it diverts energy and stops the plant from going into post-bloom sulk mode. But there's also a solid argument for leaving it well alone. Lots of folks say flowering is just part of a healthy plant's life cycle and you should let it complete that cycle, otherwise it won't know whether he's coming or going. So I'm on the fence and I'd love to know if you have any insights on this. I tend to water once a week and to my watering can I add 2 things. water conditioner to neutralise the chlorine, and fertilizer. Yep, I add fertilizer to every watering can. It's just a weak dose, but it means I never have to remember who got what and when. It's made my life so much easier. But it can catch you out, especially with newly repotted plants. Even if you fertilise once a month, it can still catch you out. I use Cybertanica pre-made mixes when I repot, and when I just started using this stuff, I didn't really check what was actually in it. I mean, I had a good idea of the basics, coconut corn, perlite, etc, but I didn't look too much into it. Well, if I had, then I would have seen that their mixes have slow release fertilisers already baked in, and most mixes from other brands have this too. And this is great, but not if you continue to feed your plant as normal after a repotting session. You might be doubling up, and feeding too much is a serious hole to get yourself into. It can really damage your plants. The same goes for new plants you bring home from the shop. It's tempting to give them the full treatment, but you have no real idea when they were last fed. It could have been last week, and it could have been 5 minutes ago. Add your own on top, and we could be in big trouble. Now I give them a break. If I know the mix has feeding, I skip fertiliser for at least a couple of months. In my early propagation videos, I was very diligent. I snippety snipped a plant and dipped the cutting into rooting powder like I was breadcrumbing a chicken nugget. And don't get me wrong, there's not much wrong with rooting hormone. It can speed things up, especially with slightly fussier plants or woody cuttings, but over time I noticed something funny. The more I got into a rhythm with propagation, the more I forgot to use it, and it didn't really make a difference. I'd root a cutting in water, in soil, or in my perlite prop box with no rooting hormone inside, and I still get a lovely healthy root system. Even ficus, which everyone says are a bit stubborn, would root just fine without it. Not a lick of rooting hormone was used here, just lots of patience. Plants already produce their own natural rooting hormone. That's literally how they survive in the wild. There's no one there in the rainforest with a tiny pot of powder helping them along. If you do love the ritual though, or if you feel like it gives you a confidence boost, then go for it. It does no harm, but don't feel like your propagation is doomed without it. I'm torn on moss poles. On the one hand, I've got this pothos absolutely living his best life. Every new leaf is bigger than the last. It's glorious. This is happening because he's latched his aerial roots onto the pole and given himself a boost in water and nutrients. But then, I've got this Monstera doing interpretive dance. The stem has completely ignored the pole and decided to lean dramatically in the opposite direction, like he's making a point. But it's not just a rebellion, it's the fact that moss poles are a lot of work. You can't just shove them in and forget about them, unfortunately. They're much needier than that. They dry out faster than your patients on repotting day, which means you have to water them constantly, every other day sometimes, just to keep the moss damp. And when you do water, it goes everywhere. Down the pole, into the pot, onto the table, into your socks. If you're not careful, you end up with pooling water at the base and suddenly you've got root rot knocking at the door. But, when it does work, when the stem behaves and the moss pole stays moist and the aerial roots actually latch on, you get the most beautiful leaves. So, do I recommend moss poles? Well, kind of. Just be ready for the upkeep. It's definitely not a casual thing, it's a full-time relationship. But if you're up for the challenge, the rewards can be worth it. For the longest time, I used to say, let the soil dry out fully before you water. That was the advice. It helps prevent overwatering, gives the roots some much needed air, and keeps the dreaded root rot at bay. And that logic still holds up. If the soil is always wet, you're basically sending out free invitations for root rot to come and stay. But there's a line, and I think I crossed it too many times in the past, and I reckon lots of folks are doing the same. This is because let it dry out fully often turns into let it dry out completely, wait another 3 days, forget about it entirely, and then flood in panic. I started realising that the plants I thought were being watered well were actually getting caught in this cycle. And that constant swing is stressful for poor old Mr. Plant. Some roots start dying off, some leaves start drooping, and suddenly it's looking a bit sad and crispy, and you're blaming the weather. These days, I try to catch them just before they go completely dry. It's more of a Goldilocks approach, still drying out between waterings, but not to the point where the roots feel abandoned. So yeah, I don't wait for bone dry anymore, I aim for pleasantly thirsty. I used to recommend this one all the time, pop those arrowroots into the soil, I'd say. More root tissue means a healthier plant, and on paper that's true. More roots equals more water and more nutrients, and it sounds like a win, right? But in practice I found it's not really worth doing this. Here's what actually happens. The arrowroots go into the soil, but they keep on going and going and going, and suddenly what was a nice manageable root ball turns into an overcrowded spaghetti party. Have you ever pulled your plant's trousers down and been hit with a wall of roots you weren't emotionally ready for? Like, there's just no soil left, it's all roots. The more arrowroots you bury, the faster this tends to happen. Plants that would have been fine in their pot for another year suddenly need repotting every few months. Which is fine if you're the oddity that loves repotting, but if you're like me and your emotional tolerance is already at full capacity, it's not exactly ideal. This is what I do with them instead. This is my once beautiful spider plant, looking a bit, shall we say, shabby, isn't he? It's got that classic spider plant thing going on, crispy ends, faded leaves, and a general sense of having seen better days. So why is this happening? Well, it's my hunch that these little devils hate living in soil. It goes back to the earlier point about letting soil dry out completely, because spider plants hate it. They hate it with a passion. They like moisture, not soggy roots but consistent hydration, and when the soil dries out fully between waterings it's straight to brown leaf city. So I tried something new, and this is the result. Same plant in pretty much the same conditions, but much happier with his lot in life. I'm not saying you can't grow spider plants in soil, you absolutely can, but if yours is constantly browning at the tips, if you're constantly stressed about when to water, maybe it's time to switch things up. I spill all the beans in this video here, so click to watch and I'll see you there.